Welcome to Front Porch Conversations at Advent Christian Village. Today my guest is Dorothy Marvick. Dorothy, thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome.
We're going to have a nice conversation and we're going to learn more about Dorothy. As you know, we're trying to interview a lot of members here at the village, so we help to have each other know our neighbors better and our fellow members here at Advent Christian Village. Dorothy, you've probably known about Advent Christian Village for how long?
Before I was born.
And tell us how you knew that.
Well, my brother is the one that founded the village.
And
so I knew about it, my family, long time ago.
And who was your father?
Robert Bixler.
And who founded Advent Christian Village?
Burr A.L. Bixler, my father's brother.
Along with Thomas Dowling.
Well, yes, more or less.
Right.
Because
they worked together.
They worked together. So much for got the land, and he was given the land. My uncle was. And we never thought about the Dowling part of it. All we thought was Uncle Burr. Burr.
Of course, that's your family connection.
Yeah.
Well, we'll talk about that more in a little bit. But tell us where you were born and a little bit about your early life.
Well, I have a funny story about where I was born. My father went in and sold a bunch of livestock in Chicago, and he got the grub stake to start a business for himself. He raised on the farm, but he couldn't get the farm. His sister was on the farm. So he wanted to invest in something for himself. But he joined up with a friend, and they kind of pooled their resources, or their grub stake, so to speak, and went to Wisconsin and bought a dairy farm. And my dad and my mother were married in June, and they went right soon after that.
So you have said a term that I don't know, and maybe our viewers don't either. What is a grub stake?
Well, how much money he got? Money that he had on hand. It was his money. We always called it a grub stake if you started a business, in those days.
Well,
way
that's
back
good to
when.
know. Thank you.
Way back when.
So were you born in Wisconsin?
Yes, I was. But the friend that went with him didn't marry his sweetheart. And he got homesick, and he just picked up and went back to Iowa and left Dad holding the sack, which he couldn't. That's another expression. You probably don't know what I mean.
That one I know.
Which he couldn't handle. So he had to give it up. He lost his money in that deal. So then my father went back to Iowa, where I had 3 siblings born after that, all born in Iowa.
But you were born in Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
You were the eldest.
I'm the oldest of 4 kids.
And one of your sisters, tell us about her. She lives here.
Frances is the youngest. She's 7 years younger than I am.
And that's Frances Rademacher.
Yes. And she and her husband used to come down and stay with Mother, and he was a boy from central Nebraska. And he couldn't live on the farm because of some health problems. So he had 4 brothers, and they all started farming and raising cattle, but he couldn't do that. So he went back to Washington, D.C., and did clerical work, and then the draft got him, and he went to the Navy, and then they started from there, doing what they had to do.
And then you have one other living sister, is that right?
Yes. And she's 7 years younger, 2 years younger than I am, in California. I was born in 1920. My brother was born in 1921, and my sister was born in 1922.
Well, you know what, Dorothy? You've just told us all something. How old you are. Yeah. And next year is a really big year. What's going to happen next year?
I'll be 100
Isn't
years
that
old.
amazing, folks? Well, Dorothy,
I'll be 100 years old. My girls are planning a birthday party for me then. So.
Well, we'll be on the lookout for that. What are your earliest memories of growing up?
Well, I have many little hits, situations growing up. Even going back to Iowa, I don't remember living in Corning when my brother and sister were born, but later when we moved to Villisca, Iowa, and my youngest sister was born there. And I started school in Villisca, Iowa. We didn't have kindergarten in those days. I was 5 in March, and I went to school that September. So.
And then did you live in Iowa most of your life growing up?
No. We moved from Iowa when I was 10 years old. My daddy was trying to make a living for these 4 kids. And my Aunt Merle, a sister of his, helped, gave him some money to help him start. And he started a roller skating rink. And we moved to Lincoln, Nebraska. And we started a roller skating rink in Havelock, Nebraska, a little suburb of Lincoln.
Did you get to roller skate a
lot? A lot. And my little sister, Frances, the youngest one, she learned to skate. She's 3 years old, and she did very well over the years. My father started the roller skating business, and he had a trailer, and we went from Lincoln, Nebraska out to western Nebraska, went to Scottsbluff, Nebraska. And you don't think Nebraska has hills, but he couldn't get over the hill with pulling the trailer. So he put it in storage, and he went on to Scottsbluff, and he worked in a bakery that my mother's cousin owned in Scottsbluff. And he worked there a while. Then they finally got enough money to go back and get the roller skates and start the roller skating. But they roller skated in Scottsbluff. Then every night they'd pack up and go to another town. They didn't stay in the one place all the time. So.
Well, you mentioned it, your Aunt Merle.
Mm-hmm.
We should know that name here at the village,
right?
You
do. Yeah, there's a street named Merle Bixler Lane.
That's right. See, this is also village trivia today. So you finished school in Nebraska?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't. We moved from Scottsbluff to Henry, Nebraska. And I was a junior in high school then. And after I went through the junior year, and my sister and my brother we had 2 buildings in that little town of Henry. And the juniors and seniors were in one building, and the freshmen and sophomore in the other building. Then we moved from Henry, it was on the border from Wyoming, a little town called Torrington, Wyoming. And we moved to Concordia, Kansas from there. And I graduated from high school in Kansas.
Well, you have seen the Midwest, haven't you?
Yes.
And lived it. What happened after high school?
Well, my parents, or my Aunt Merle, gave some money to help me start to go to Aurora College to school. And then I wanted to be a nurse because my Aunt Merle was a nurse, so I left college and I went into nursing in St. Joe, Missouri. And I didn't finish that. I was homesick and I didn't study good enough, and I'd cry myself to sleep, and that would be the end of the studying. So, in the meantime, my parents moved from another town to another town after I left home. I went to Chicago to live and get a job doing kind of like factory work. Mm-hmm. And I like to work with my hands and do things with my hands, so I tried a job with secretary work, and in those days it didn't have the laws so to keep the man off you, his hands off of you. So I had to deal with that, and then I left that kind of work because I couldn't deal with it. So anyway, and so I went to Chicago to live and work there until finally I took a little trip to my sister, the second sister, went to California and got married, and so I decided to go to California to see what that was like. So I was out there a couple of years, and then I went back to Iowa when I met my husband and the father of my children, and so I raised them in Iowa.
And tell me about your children.
I have 2 girls. Patty is one of them and Janet's the other. Patty is a long story about her, too, but Janet married her high school sweetheart, and she lives in Lincoln, Nebraska. and just celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary this summer. In the meantime, my other daughter, Jana, was at the class reunion, and she met Patty's high school sweetheart and told him to call Patty, because Patty was alone now. So he did, and so they got together, and he lives in New Mexico. He was a game warden in New Mexico, and so they married, and they live in New Mexico.
Well, great. So neither of them are too close, but...
No, they're not. Well, I came down here because the girls wanted me to sell my property, and I had a big 2-story house with a basement, and it was wonderful. My husband put in air conditioning. We had everything that I needed there, and I should never have left, but then I came here, because I thought this would be where they'd take care of me when I got older, which is still a reason I'm here.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're certainly glad you're here, Dorothy.
So anyway...
Dorothy, during your years growing up, after the village was started, did your family or you travel here?
No. In fact, Uncle Burr came to Iowa to visit us one time. I was 18 years old by the time he came to Iowa to visit. And we go back and forth from western Nebraska to visit Iowa because my mother's people lived there, and that was my grandparents. Mm-hmm. Well, to go back to the first grandparent, lived with us till I was 10 years old, and my grandpa died when I was 2. So then Grandma lived with us, and then she died. So anyway.
What year did you move to the village?
2002.
And you live in Riverwoods?
I live in Riverwoods in a house.
Good. Well, during that time, you've gotten involved in doing a number of things, volunteer-wise?
Well, not a number of things. I got involved right off the bat with doing some sewing in the rustic shop. And when Vida Massengale was doing alterations, I got acquainted with her, and so I went there and I started making what we call, they prefer us calling them garment protectors. I call them bibs.
And that's for the nursing home?
And that was for the nursing home. And we sold a few there at the shop for people to buy, So that was pretty much what I always did. We had lots of fabric in those days, but we don't have fabric anymore like we did.
Well, I don't think most people buy fabric like they used to either.
Well, they do, but it's so expensive. You can't afford to buy fabric and make bibs. You have to depend on just... So I used to have the fabric, so they were double layered, and do 2 different patterns on each side. But now all I can do is put white, like sheeting, mm-hmm. or lining for drapes or something of that nature on the back, and then have the color on the one side of the bib. So I don't know. I never kept track how many I made. I started making them actually before I moved here. I was visiting my mother. My mother and dad lived here, built a house on 136, about a mile from the church. And so it just made easier to do. And the girl that was doing bibs, she said, "Do you sew?" And I said, "Yeah, I do." And so I started making bibs then and there, And I signed up for, when they wanted to know what I could do, I signed up that I could sew. Nobody ever asked me to do any until I went back when I first moved here. Then I got involved with that at the rustic shop.
Dorothy, let's do a little commercial right now.
Okay.
And I just want to remind people, if you have a lot of fabric in your home and you don't know what to do with it, the rustic shop can use it. And this would be how it would be. Dorothy and others would make garment protectors for the nursing home.
Yes.
So during the time your parents lived here, though, you did visit before you originally moved.
Oh, yes. I visited here often then. Of course, my Uncle Burr wasn't living then.
Mm-hmm. What year did your parents move here?
They moved here in 1970. My father pastored a church in Stone Mountain, Georgia, and he'd come down here at different times. He was in the conference in Georgia, mm-hmm. and Alabama and Mississippi in that area. But he come down here to buy a property, which he did, and they built their own house. And Aunt Merle, my dad's sister, she shared the money, and my dad did the work.
Well, that sounds like a good agreement.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. And Aunt Merle, as a matter of fact, she and my mother helped start the rustic shop. They helped start the rustic shop, such as it is. And then when she started, they had the Twice Nice shop, which sells used clothing and such as that, and bedding and linens and stuff. And that was all in one. Aunt Merle managed all of that.
Where did it start out? Where was the rustic shop originally?
Oh boy, somewhere between the two churches, there was a little shop in there.
Oh, okay.
Between the big church and the little
the chapel.
Chapel. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, I've known it's been at different places, but it's been at the Village Square for a long time now.
Oh yeah, it has.
And it's a great place to shop. Always something you might not need, but you might want there.
Something you can't live without.
Exactly. There have been some lighthouses in the window lately, and I keep trying not to look because I do like lighthouses.
Well, whatever it takes to make you happy.
That's right. What makes you happy, Dorothy?
Well, having friends. I mean, friends that I visit with and party with. We don't party much, but there's something wrong with living here. Neighbors don't neighbor like I did in Iowa.
Well, maybe this will help people be more easily introduced to somebody by watching an interview.
Maybe so. I have good neighbors. I live next door to Jackie and Ray Campbell. Mm-hmm. And I got acquainted with all the neighbors on that street on Elmwood Lane. But we don't neighbor. We don't go back and forth and neighbor like I did in Iowa.
Do you think that's in part, now in Iowa, did you live on a farm?
No, I lived in town.
Because I was wondering, it seems like to me a lot of farming communities, people help each other so much in their farming endeavors.
Well, I know they did, but we had neighbors. We'd go back and forth, and I'd call them in the morning and say, I've got cookies. You want to come over for coffee? Or I'd say, put the coffee on, I'll bring the cookies, or whatever. Mm-hmm. And we do that. And then we used to go on weekend trips with some of the neighbors. Or we'd go out to the lake and cook on a fire grill out to the lake by our house. So I spent a lot of time doing that, raising my kids, my grandkids too, when they were around. They got to go do that with me.
Before we actually started the interview, I asked you if you had been on TV before, and you were telling me about that. So why don't you tell our audience about your TV debut?
Well, we were making candy, and we learned to make divinity, and we won a prize. And they invited us to go to Omaha and appear on TV and show the public how you can make divinity, which we did. We make it in different colors and different, just tinted it. You think of divinity being white, but we made it pink and green and yellow and all different colors.
Well, that was fun. And your children were at what age, your daughters?
When I did that? Mm-hmm. Well, they were young. They were in school. They were junior high most of the time. We had an Advent Christian church in Villisco where I lived, so I was used to that church coming here as well. I
haven't had divinity in years, but my mother used to make it, my mother and her sister. And that was always and you had to, I don't know, this was what she said, you had to find the right day to make it. Why was that?
Well, if it was steamy and raining and stuff, it kind of affected the egg white when you were beating it. So,
well, thank you for clearing up that mystery for me. I never knew what she meant.
Well, it's true, and you put the egg white on a pie too. Well, I've made lots of pies.
I know you are well known for your pies. What is your favorite pie to make?
Well, I think lemon meringue, lemon pie.
We've sometimes had auctions, and Dorothy has entered a pie that won. And
that was an apple pie, though.
Oh, was it?
The one I won. Then I won on the cookies last year, making pumpkin cookies.
You enjoy cooking a lot?
I did when there was a lot of people was around, and big families. I used to work in our church back in Iowa with a friend. She and I co-chaired, and we'd serve dinners for the high school, sports banquet, and the Methodist Church asked us to cook for their mother and daughter parties instead of the mothers having to cook and then try to eat that night. So
they got to be the guests that way.
They got to be the guests. They don't hire us, our church, our group in our church, to go and cook the meal. Of course, we had people making things. We had people make salads and different things that completed that. And they still do. One thing they still doing back there is making a Thanksgiving dinner with turkey. But they have one lady who does all the pies. She does that for their pies. But they have turkey and dressing and potatoes and gravy and whatever. It started out making 2 turkeys, and I think they cook 8 turkeys now.
Oh, the crowd has grown.
Yes, very much so.
Well, Dorothy, would you give our viewers today some insight on how you got to be 99?
Well, my mother lived almost 102, so part of it I claimed good genes. My 2 sisters are still living. My brother's already deceased. But I think that we have reached ages that we are because of genes and our character, whatever you call it, So, and I always stayed busy doing something. I was a room mother for the kids in school. I did lots of stuff for the church. We did lots of dinners for the church. Public dinners, and invite people, that kind of thing. Staying busy, and I still say that's busy here. It keeps me going, keep moving. I had people claim that I was kind of bossy when I tell them you get out and walk. Just keep moving.
Keep moving.
Keep moving.
And what advice would you give a young person today?
Well, it sounds kind of strange. The first thing I'd teach them how to save their money. I'm kind of careless with money. So as I look back, it would have been a better way. There would have been a better way. But I managed.
Well, and that's something that I think a lot of people struggle with through the years. And
yeah.
But it does help, I'm sure, a family when that's not such a struggle.
Right. My husband was a rural letter carrier, and he died with Lou Gehrig's disease also.
Oh my.
And that's why my grandson knew he had the same disease. He knew what it was coming on. So.
Well, Dorothy, I've certainly enjoyed sitting on this front porch with you and visiting today. Thank you so much.
Well, anything else you want to ask?
Anything else you want to tell me that I didn't ask?
I don't know remembered what was on the list to start with.
Well, I think we've covered most of it. Here's one that we haven't covered. Was there a particular experience in your life that really was for a positive change for you?
Well, it probably did affect my life because I did a lot of bumming around the country. So I went into Chicago to work, and then I went to California to work, and did a lot of just experimenting life. Didn't get married till I was 26 years old. So.
Wow! And that year it was probably you were not quite the youngest bride, were you?
No, I wasn't.
Well, I think travel helps broaden people's minds and their experiences.
Yeah, it does. It really does. And I traveled a lot. I visited every state in the Union but Alaska. So I have been around.
Yes, ma'am. And you're still traveling at times. I hear about you leaving or coming back from being out in the Midwest.
Mostly the Midwest. Oh, of course, I've been in New Mexico too, so. I don't know what experience I would say was so outstanding at all. I think maybe living in the city and then moving back to my little town in Iowa. I liked it better, my little town, than I did in the city.
Well, I think a lot of people may say that, but most of us are probably glad we've had some city living experience.
Oh, sure.
But for somebody who grew up in a small town too, I'm glad I don't live in a big city anymore.
Oh, me too.
Well, thank you so much for watching another Front Porch interview, our Front Porch conversation here at Advent Christian Village. Watch for announcements about upcoming shows. Thank you, Dorothy.
You're welcome. Glad to do it.